Hey everybody, really appreciate you taking the time to join us for today's webinar, Unlocking Efficiency for City Growth with Ordinal. My name is Michael Tharrington and I'm a growth and community consultant with Breakground. In just a little bit, I'm going to take you all on a tour of our AI. I'll show you how this tool can help you to better serve your communities by eliminating tedious tasks and communication bottlenecks so that you'll be freed up to focus on what matters to you most and what matters most to you and those in your community. Before I jump into things, let me tell you all about the flow for today's webinar. In the next few minutes, I'll give you all a 10-minute product demo of Ordinal, showing you the basic capabilities of our software and how this AI assistant can be particularly helpful to city planners and local government officials. After the demo, I'll be bringing on Rick Berry, an experienced planner out of Arkansas, to interview him about his time as a planner, the pain points he felt during the job, and how Ordinal can help relieve planners so that they, or rather y'all, can do your best work with less stress. The interview portion with Rick should take about 10 to 15 minutes, and afterward we'll be opening the floor for 10 minutes of question and answers from the audience before we say our goodbyes and part ways, hopefully to hear from you again in the future. On that note, you can drop your questions into the chat as they come to you. Many of my colleagues are tuning in to this stream and may be able to answer you in the moment directly in the chat. But also, we'll be selecting questions from the audience to feature during our Q&A, so please stick around for us to answer your questions. On that note, if we run short on time and aren't able to answer your questions before signing off, we'll be following up after the webinar to get in touch and provide an answer. Throughout this presentation, we'll be sharing the following QR code on screen for those of you who would like to sign up to get more information. Just scan the QR code when it appears and you'll be taken to our contact form. Likewise, we'll drop a link in the chat, so if you're live with us, you can just click directly on that link. If you sign up, a member of our team will reach out and tell you more. We're always happy to set up a demo with you and your colleagues so that y'all can explore more of what Ordinal has to offer on a private call with our team. If that sounds interesting to you, please scan the code or click the link and share your contact info with us. Finally, keep in mind that we're streaming here and thus may experience some lag or performance issues. Clearly, we've experienced a few issues. If for some reason I lose the internet, my team member Grace, who is behind the scenes, will hop in to fill my shoes. Now let's get things rolling with the demo. In just a moment, I'm going to open up Ordinal in another window here and share my screen with you all so that I can give you a tour of the software and show you just how easy it is to get going. Notably, I'm not an experienced planner. We have one of those coming in later. But I do know how our software works and can walk us through a few examples that I think will resonate with those of you in the audience who are planners. So give me just a moment and I'm going to share my screen with y'all. Okay, here we go. So this is the basic interface for Ordinal. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what we're looking at here. So up top you can see this is Ordinal, our AI assistant, asking, "Hi, how can I help?" Beneath that, we have a few example questions that you can click on to ask Ordinal. Down here at the bottom, we have a text input box where you can write your questions. And right here, we have the FAQ. This will just give you some advice for writing a good prompt for AI. You can comb through this and get a little bit of information when you're writing your prompt. And then down here to the left side, we have our saved chats. These are just previous chats that we've had with Ordinal. You can archive them by clicking this button, or you can go up to the top and start a new chat, which is what we'll do now. This is pretty much what you'll do every time you hop into Ordinal. You can see at the top here we have this drop-down bar. This is really only available to us as admin. It allows us to select the different towns that we work with and enter information that way. But when you're looking at your instance of Ordinal, it's going to be roped off to just your town. We're only going to be looking at documents that you provided us. So we'll go ahead and zoom into Springdale here so we can ask a couple questions. So now we're looking at an Ordinal instance that's opened up to Springdale. And we're just going to click on one of these questions, one of these example questions. Right now, Ordinal is thinking about a response to our question. It's combing through all of the documents that it holds for Springdale, all of the documents that Springdale offered us. And it is trying to answer, does a firework vendor need insurance? So you can see here, it has thought through our question, and it has gotten back to us with firework vendor insurance requirements. And it's kind of gone through and given us a little bit of information. It's bolded a lot of the key things that we want to think about. And you can even click on the reasoning tab here, and it'll provide you with a quick reason as to why it thinks what it does. And then you can open up the citations, which are really like your ordinances, the documents that it is referenced to give us this answer. So by clicking on these different ordinances, we can open them up and we can see all of the different ordinances. And sometimes they come out kind of as just a big block of information, and they can be kind of a little bit difficult to understand. So we have this summarize button up here, and now Ordinal is chewing through all of this information, and it's coming up with a nice succinct summary of basically what this code says. And this can be helpful to you if someone has asked you a question and you're going to get back to them and you want to cite all of the different ordinances. You can click this copy button to copy these and drop them in your email. And if you feel like you have an ordinance that can be just a little tricky to understand, you can click on this button here and summarize it and grab that summary and provide that as well. Let's go ahead and start up a new chat really quick. So 1 second. We'll start up a new chat, and we're still on Springdale, but we're going to actually type in a specific address. So I looked up some land earlier, and we're going to share 1903 Powell Street. I found it right there. And now we're going to start a new chat that is zoomed into specifically that 1903 address in Springdale. So you can see here that it's already pulled some helpful information for us. It's found the address here. It says that it's in the C2 zone. It'll tell us the city council members in that zone. It'll tell us the school board zones. It has opened up the address on the GIS map, so we can open that really quick. And here, I'll share this tab so y'all can see. It's opened up Springdale. It's pulled up the address right there, smack in the middle, 1903. And that can be helpful to you if you need to look at the map for something in particular. All right, so now we're looking back at Ordinal, and let's ask a specific question about this address. So, or actually, we'll ask a generalized question. This is sometimes like a popular question that people want to know. What can I build on my property? So now we're just going to ask it generally. This is the property, 1903. What can we build on this property? And it's doing its thing. It's just thinking about the question and referencing the different documents it has on hand for the area. And you can see here it's gotten back to us and it says what can be built in the C2 zone. Again, it's leaning on that information that it previously pulled, so it knows Powell Street is in a C2 zone. And it gets back to us with all of the different permitted uses: retail activities, public uses, cultural, recreational, and health facilities. I won't read through the whole list, but this is basically telling us, a smattering of things that we can build on that property. And again, we can view the citations. We can look at the reasoning. It says in general, this is a C2 general commercial district, so that's where it's pulling a lot of its information from. And in fact, we'll take the same question. Let's say, what can I build on my property? Let's pretend that we've gotten someone who is Spanish speaking that is asking us this question. So we can actually pose it the same question, and we can say answer in Spanish. And now it's going to think about that same question and get back to us with an answer in Spanish. And Spanish is just an example. You can choose any variety of languages that you would like. I'm just choosing Spanish because it's widely spoken in America. But we did have a town in Arkansas where Marshallese was widely spoken, and we've asked Ordinal to answer us in Marshallese, and it can do that as well. But you can see here it's gotten back to us with an answer in Spanish, and it's again referenced the zone as C2. So that's just kind of a little example of some questions that you might ask Ordinal. This is really just a basic application, but hopefully you can see the potential for using this tool to answer inquiries more quickly and make it so that anybody on your team can easily get answers to various questions. I think what we'll do now is we're about ready to bring on Rick here in just a moment. So I think I'm going to go ahead and exit out of Ordinal, and we can bring in my colleague Rick Berry. who is an experienced planner in Arkansas.
Hey Michael, how are you?
Hey, Rick. Doing well. It's good to see you. How you doing?
Pretty well, pretty well. Glad to be here.
It's good to have you with us, and I'm wondering if you could just briefly tell the folks here about your background in planning.
Yeah, absolutely. Over the course of the last several years, I've had the opportunity to work in county planning in Arkansas, some town planning, as well as city planning. And a lot of that has been supported by my educational background in public administration, which I got my master's here at the University of Arkansas.
Awesome. How'd you first get to know the team at Breakground?
That's a great question. I guess just kind of knowing the right people in the right place at the right time. I was introduced to them, I believe it was back in February or March of 2024, and admittedly I was pretty green to AI at that point, but I was very interested with what they had to offer. So I was like, well, let's see what this thing is. And as soon as they showed it to me, it was Ordinal has just blown me away, and it still does to this day. The ability to be as efficient and save as much time as humanly possible, not just within planning, but also across many different departments in the municipal field.
Awesome. Well, I'm curious, when you first were introduced Ordinal, you said you really didn't have much experience with AI. What was going through your mind? Like, what were your initial questions about the software? Were you skeptical about anything, or how did you feel?
I think I had a lot of the same nerves that a lot of people do. Something new is always scary or bad to people, and so just keeping an open mind and going in there and just realizing, oh my goodness, this is such an amazing tool that could be so useful to so many people, not just here in the state of Arkansas, but across the country.
Awesome. Well, I think there's a lot of folks out there who hear about AI and they have this kind of knee-jerk negative reaction and think, "Oh no, it's gonna take my job or take jobs away from other folks in my field." What do you say to those folks?
I normally just tell them that's I can understand that feeling and that fear. I imagine it's something similar to when desktop computers became more and more relevant in the workplace. People were fearful that administrative jobs, secretarial type jobs were going to disappear. But as we've seen over the course of these 30-something years since computers became more relevant in the workplace, we can see that these computers are an extension of the capabilities of the individual worker. And I see AI, especially here with Ordinal, I see Ordinal being much the same.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because the idea is not that it will take your job, but it will enhance your ability to do your job and hopefully open you up to be able to do things that are not just, that don't involve having to dig through massive amounts of documents. Hopefully this will take away some of those tasks that take up a lot of time in your job and then in fact, open you up to do other things. So that's what we're really good. Well, that's what we're going for. Well, look, I think we're at a good point to move over to some audience Q&A. So I'm going to go ahead and start plucking some of these out here. And I can see that we've got one question that says, you've mentioned phrases like efficiency, transparency, and equitable access to government. What keeps drawing you back to those phrases? And I think this one is for you, Rick, about reasons that you are using Ordinal.
Absolutely. So efficiency, I mean, we really see time savings as being one of those things that whether it's the computers that I referenced earlier, or in the case of AI, in Ordinal's case, just having something to allow you to be more efficient with your ability to do your job. That allows you to free up time for lack of a better way of putting it, the things that are more important than, say, just researching a particular question. Ordinal gives you the opportunity to save time and not have to constantly go back and do the kind of in-depth research that you might have otherwise had to do. In terms of transparency, I would have to say there are so many rules out there that the average person isn't going to know. And tying it together with equitable access to government, I would say that it's important for us to recognize that there are people, regardless of their ethnic background, country of origin, age, educational background. So many people don't necessarily know the rules. And so whenever you have something like Ordinal that allows for a much more rapid ability to rattle off what those rules are in a fair and transparent way, that helps someone, regardless of, we'll say, using the example that you provided earlier, a Spanish speaker may be able to walk into a planning office and ask a question. That question can be typed into Ordinal, and that answer can be spit out by Ordinal very quickly in that language.
Yeah, that's a great point. I also think even equitable access for just people in your organization,
Absolutely.
oftentimes an organization, maybe there's one planner that really has a great hold on all of the different code. Maybe you have a new planner comes in who doesn't yet know the city. Well, the cool thing about Ordinal is that you can give it to that new planner, and then they're able to really quickly ask questions and get answers without having to go and ask someone else in the department.
That's absolutely right. A lot of what you'll see across, and again, not just planning departments, but municipalities, government institutions generally, you'll have this institutional knowledge within, say, Bob, and when Bob is either wanting to go elsewhere or retires, well, it's hard for you to unload what is in Bob's brain directly into someone else's brain or into a hard drive. So having something like Ordinal really allows people to have an easy access to what the answers are without having to rely on a singular person.
Right on. Well, look, I see we have another question, and I think I'll probably take this one. The question is, what would you say to people who have tried ChatGPT and are afraid of what potentially incorrect things AI might respond with? Firstly, I'd say you're totally warranted to have those fears. ChatGPT is pulling information from lots of different sources on the web. It's such a wide bucket of sources that it's tough to know exactly where it's getting its answers from. But the thing about Ordinal is that it's AI that is roped off just specifically to documents that we've gotten from you in your town. So if a town comes to us and they want to buy Ordinal and they're worried that AI might hallucinate, might pull answers that are unrelated to their town, that is something that we can that's a worry that hopefully we can comfort them with really quickly, because we're not going to be pulling answers from elsewhere on the web. You're giving us all of your documents, any sort of text documents that you have. They can even be screenshots of text, PDFs, Word documents, any sort of forms that you use. And we'll feed it to the AI, upload all of this text information, and then when you're asking questions, you can know that it's only going to be pulling specifically from that pool of documentation that you provided us with. And not only that, but if you update your documentation, at some point, at any point, you can let us know and we'll update it on your behalf. We're not going to charge you each time that we update that information for you. You could just bring us information and we'll update it. And part of that is because we really want Ordinal to work well for you. If we don't let you update your documents and you have bad information in there, it's not going to be as helpful to you as it can be. So that is something that is really important to us and something that we think about a lot. All right. Well, look, I see we have another one, and I think this one's quite good for you, Rick. Based upon your experience, who do you think benefits most from Ordinal? Smaller towns or cities or larger cities, and why?
That's a really good question. Wow. I would say that I don't know that there's really one or the other that would benefit most. I could see in the case of smaller towns, cities, using it as a means by which to be able to catch up, especially using Northwest Arkansas as an example. This area is growing at such a rapid pace that it is hard for the planning departments regardless of whether it's the smaller towns or the larger towns of the region, it's hard for them to keep up. So having Ordinal around is something that would definitely take a lot of that weight off of the shoulders of the planners. But in the case of the larger towns and cities, I could definitely see them using it as a tool to do much the same as the smaller towns and cities, but also as a means by which to find those issues, contradictions, and so on in their code, and be able to continue to sharpen their code, going back to phrases that we used earlier, transparency and equitable access to government. Something like Ordinal has a very, very useful trait in that direction.
Yeah, I think that the size of the city doesn't always matter. I think that we've seen both large and small cities see value out of Ordinal. I think we've seen definitely growing cities see value out of it, and particularly cities where they have large staff, where they've had new people join in. So I think it just is it's not necessarily the size makeup, but it's useful for cities both big and small.
Absolutely, and with you mentioning the size of the staff and new people, it kind of takes me back to one of the previous questions, where you have the ability for people to not have to rely on a singular person for the institutional knowledge, and that sort of thing can be extremely painful for smaller towns and cities, because a lot of the time they do not have as many planners as, say, a larger city. Most towns in the Midwest, you may only have 1, 2, 3 or so, whereas somewhere large like a New York City, they're probably going to have several dozen planners. So it's harder for that institutional knowledge to fall away.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, I'm going to pluck another question from the audience here. In a hypothetical world, Ordinal is in the hands of every municipality. What comes next for Ordinal? I'll take a stab at this real quick, but if you want to chime in as well, Rick, please do. My thoughts are that Ordinal is really a great... what Ordinal is really good at is digging through a lot of text information and giving you back quick answers to questions that you have about a pile of information. So while right now we're targeting city planners and helping out local governments, there's really no limit to what we could do this with. We can help out. I think initially we're going to probably spread to other parts of local governments to try and help out different people in different coding departments, any sort of departments where you have just a massive amount of information that you need to be able to dig through. I think that's kind of the ideal person that we're targeting. But you could see this application used in hospitals. You could see it used in any sort of places where you have just a large amount of code that you need to be able to dig through and get answers back from. Are there any sort of particular places that come to your mind, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you outlined it really well when you said anytime that you are at an organization where there's a massive amount of code. I could imagine it, as you said, in hospitals, even colleges, universities, and so on. Oftentimes you look at the rule book at a college or a university, it is pretty similar in length to that of a code for a city, because you are creating an entire kind of infrastructure within that campus.
Yeah, totally. And I think, from our standpoint, we started with city planning because that's what our founders were interested in, and we'll be getting into that more during our next episode, during our next webinar episode. We'll be speaking with the founders and discussing kind of how Ordinal came to be. So if that's something that interests y'all can kind of see why we chose to, y'all can learn about why we chose to attack this problem first and where we're headed next. But yeah, that's more to come in a future episode. Well, look, I think we've gotten through the bulk of our questions now, and we're about ready to wrap up. So thank you so much for joining the call, Rick, and I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, and hope to see you again soon, and thank you to everyone who's watching.
All right, y'all. So now it's time for us to wrap up and say our goodbyes. If you're interested and you want to learn more about Ordinal, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We'll pop the QR code up on the screen one more time and drop a link in chat for any of you who are tuning in. Please, scan the code and just sign the form, and someone from the Breakground team will be in touch. As I mentioned just a minute ago, we're hosting another webinar that features our founders next Tuesday at the same time, and that'll be December 10th. We plan on telling y'all the origin story of Breakground, and we'll be interviewing our founders to talk about how Ordinal came to be and where we're headed next. If that interests you, please join us on LinkedIn at 1 p.m. CT next Tuesday the 10th. Likewise, please loop your friends and colleagues in. We're still early stages here, but are really excited about helping out local governments and communities. We think we have something really special with Ordinal and want to get it in front of as many folks as we can, so please help us to spread the word. Finally, thanks again for coming to our webinar and sharing your interest. If you have any thoughts or feedback, we'd really appreciate it if you would get in touch via the forum. You can also contact me directly on LinkedIn or email me at michael@breakground.ai. I'd be happy to speak with you and would love to get any feedback you might have. That's all for now, and we really appreciate you tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and thanks again for coming. Bye.